As we turn our attention to training camp, it's ever so close, Christian. It's about to be here. It's coming ever so close. Just a couple more recordings, and training camp will be here. We've started to take a look at, some key storylines, narratives, giving the praise to where it's due to the defensive backs, the safeties, and units that are going to be very successful, like the wide receivers and quarterbacks and running backs, like we just talked about with Jahmyr Gibbs. But just looking at roster spots that could be very competitive at different units. I do think that, clearly everyone's going to want to watch early the battle between Tate Ratledge and Graham Glasgow, who's going to be the center after Frank Ragnow retired. I'm also curious, too, behind Sam Laporta and Brock Wright, who's going to be that guy. A lot of people are looking at Kenny Yeboah. Does somebody else step up, an undrafted free agent? Does Luke Deal get an opportunity to make some noise and do some things? So we'll see who has opportunities. Clearly, the interior of the defensive line is going to be shuffled around a lot. You clearly understand Tyleik Williams is going to have his role, but behind some reserve roles could produce some battles with Broderick Martin, Roy Lopez, and the likes, Pat O'Connor in the mix. So I'm very curious to see how a lot of the defense also shakes out in reserve spots, like behind, the starters. Where does Ennis Rakestraw fit in? Where does he slot in? Where do guys like Avonte Maddox, where do they start being used? So it's a lot of interesting things to monitor early on in training camp. What are some of the key battles that you think are the most competitive, or maybe ones that maybe people aren't talking about?
Yeah, I think with the Lions, obviously bringing back so much of their starting lineup, especially on the offensive side, it is really about the depth as you go a little bit further down my rankings. And that I think the backup quarterback position battle is always going to be important. Hendon Hooker always going to be tested for that backup spot, and this is really a make or break year for him going into year 3. After this year, he's entering the final year of his rookie deal, and the Lions have a decision. Do you want to keep him as the long-term backup, or do you want to take another chance on somebody else in the draft? And I do think this is a very intriguing quarterback class coming up. And so if Hendon Hooker doesn't do the trick, maybe the Lions would look into this class of 2026 quarterbacks to try and find their next backup behind Jared Goff. Another one, the tight end position. You talked about Shane Zylstra is a guy who came in, won the job mid-season from Parker Hess, and then came in and was that kind of hybrid tight end fullback type of player throughout the rest of the regular season and into the postseason. But they bring in Kenny Yeboah, who is essentially did the same thing for the New York Jets last year. He's a guy worth keeping an eye on as well. And then in my opinion, there's 3 starting jobs that really catch my eye as far as potential position battles. The first one being the defensive end position. Marcus Davenport seems like the far and away lock right now, but let's not forget about a guy like Josh Paschal, a guy like Al-Quadin Muhammad. Maybe Ahmed Hassanin is in the mix. And then who knows? I mean, there's been all this buzz about Zadarius Smith. Maybe when training camp rolls around, he decides to sign on the dotted line and come back to the Detroit Lions and give it another go. So that's one position. May not seem like the most outwardly competitive position battle right now, but I do think there's an opportunity for that to become a heated competition throughout the course of training camp. And then the interior offensive line, the center position, the guard position. The center position was my number 1 position battle because I think that decides who's even in the competition for that guard spot, be it left or right. It sounds like Christian Mahogany might be the first option on the left side. That's where he played when he got his 2 starting opportunities last year. And then that right guard spot will probably between Miles Frazier and whoever loses out of Graham Glasgow, Tate Ratledge at center. So from my viewpoint, the offensive line, that interior, the position battles work from the top down. Whoever loses out on the center now becomes the top candidate at the right guard position. And then you never know, a guy like Colby Sorsdal could be in the mix there. A guy like Netane Muti could be in there. Giovanni Manu, they talked a little bit about maybe moving him to guard or at least getting him some reps at guard. So potentially he's the guy that could be in the mix there as well. And so to me, that interior offensive line is really the big one to watch.